This commenter says, I would love to hear your explanation to a client why you choose positive reinforcement. I'm all for it, but have a hard time explaining why it's the better option when people go, but suppression. So I think there are sort of two ways of responding to this question, and I'm going to talk about both of them. So one way to reframe this might be, how do I speak to clients who are already using aversive or suppressive methods with their dog? And the other might be, how do I get buy-in? Or how do I get the client on board with using positive reinforcement? And I'm actually going to answer the second one first. And it's interesting, I actually don't use the term positive reinforcement when I'm having this conversation with my clients. And that's not something that I had really consciously thought about until I was preparing to answer this question. And I think that part of that is because my client base is struggling with nervous system dysregulation and or aggressive behavior. And so I've explained in other videos why this is the case, but we're not doing a lot of operant-based work. And, with the caveat that operant conditioning and classical conditioning are happening all of the time, the focus of our work really is not operant. You don't address behavior cases with teaching manners or obedience. And so a lot of what we're doing is not about reinforcing or punishing behaviors. And so instead, what I'm talking to my clients about is their dog's stress levels, their dog's nervous system. I'm also talking to them about their human stress levels and their human nervous system, because mammalian nervous systems are very similar. I'm talking to them about anxiety disorders and trauma. And so now we're having a reframe where we're not talking about the dog's behaviors. The behaviors are a byproduct. They are a symptom of the dog's high arousal, and then also of the dog's emotions underlying that arousal. And so it's a bit of a framework shift. We're not really talking about reinforcing the behaviors or punishing the behaviors. We're talking about how to help the dog feel safer. We're talking about how to build resilience to stress. We're talking about how to build self-regulation and coping skills. We're talking about management. We're talking about enrichment, which includes mental enrichment, but also physical enrichment, social enrichment, independence, safety and security, the ability to flight, the ability to engage in species typical behaviors, pain, medical needs, sleep, other categories of hygiene. It becomes clear that the answer to that is not to punish the dog. The vast majority of people, when they shift from seeing the dog's behavior as bad to being a symptom of mental illness or trauma or extreme fear or big frustration, for most people, that shift is sort of natural. And that's why I would really love to see the larger shift in dog training and professionals move away from sort of this very focused, very operant focused conversation, because it's actually about so much more than that. The behavior is a symptom. I do often, though, have clients who are already using aversive or suppressive methods. Either they have done that formally, with or without professional guidance, through prong collars, spray bottles, e-collars, that sort of thing, or just in their day-to-day, whether intentionally or not, yelling at the dog, moving the dog, isolating the dog, ignoring the dog, engaging in these punishing behaviors, sometimes because they're trying to decrease the behavior or punish the dog, and sometimes just out of their own nervous system response to what is happening. They are going into fight. And so for those clients, I explain as part of their management and enrichment protocol, which they receive before our initial consultation after filling out a very lengthy new client questionnaire where I'm identifying all of the different stressors, and I'll identify those suppressive or aversive techniques as stressors for the dog, as things we need to eliminate. And as part of that, I provide the AVZAB Humane Training Statement. So the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior has a humane training statement that includes a lengthy explanation, lots of detail about why we particularly don't want to use these methods for dogs who are facing behavior concerns. And that includes citations to scientific studies explaining the fallout of using such methods, including anxiety, apathy, aversion to associated stimuli, and increased aggression. And so I send that over along with what we can do instead in those moments to the client. And that way they have plenty of time and space to process that, to read through that, to think about that on their own before they are just face-to-face with me in a Zoom meeting. And then we can email about that before the initial consultation, talk about it at the consultation. But generally, when it's framed up that way, when the evidence is shared, and when, again, we're talking about this within the framework of their dog's not being bad, these behaviors are a symptom of the dog really struggling, people are generally pretty on board, in my experience, with doing away with those aversive responses so they can better support their dog to be healthy and live well.